Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Into the Dojo. Um, so this video is actually going to be me responding to a comment that someone left. A M Green 18F asked a question about my experience as a Kudo person, or at least a Kudo stylist. And so the question was, and hopefully I'll be able to figure out how to like post the comment somewhere at the bottom of the screen so you can also see it. Um, so I think the most difficult thing for starting Kudo for me was so there were two things for me. Um, the first thing was having to get used to training and sparring in this thing, and there's a number of reasons why. The first one, and this is probably one that I think you would probably realize after just looking at this thing, or at least the size of this helmet, is that it throws off your distancing a little bit. Um, Before coming to Japan, I had practiced a lot of various different kinds of striking arts. Right, I did some sanda in university. I did some boxing with the university boxing club. Um, One of the artist guys in the club I was a part of also did some panatukan, so I was also doing some of that stuff and some jikundo. So I had a mixed striking background alongside the karate that I did before I even got to university. Um, and so I had got really used to being able to slipping punches and kind of like swaying to a degree, right? I wasn't amazing, but I was good enough, right, to not get punched in the face too much. So, but what happened is like the if I kind of put this side by side, I don't have a big head, right? So if you look at the length and the width of my head versus the length and the width of this helmet, right? Um, this is about 1.5 times the length, the size of my head, right? So I'm getting like there's extra surface area to strike, right? So even if I slip punches, I'm still getting hit, right, from the side, which kind of threw off my distancing. And so alongside that, also this, like, I'll put it on real fast so you can kind of see. You may not hear what I'm saying, but just to give you kind of an idea. Right. So there's about some extra, so the padding here is snug on the inside, but there's extra padding along the sides, just so it doesn't, you're not eating knuckles to the skull, right? There's also extra padding down here. Now, if you look this way, I can't see in the camera right now, but like I feel like my peripheral vision, like where my face ends, is about here, and so there's this much extra um, face shielding on the mask. So I think my face kind of like it stops here, right? And so there's like this much extra extending from where my face is. So where I would usually be able to sway back and kind of miss a shot by here, it still makes contact. So my distancing for punches got thrown off a little bit because of the helmet. And that also translated into when I'm slipping without, or I'm doing any kind of striking without the helmet, because I've gotten used to that. I move my head too. I tend to move my head too much, so I have to be very conscious about how I move my head when I'm wearing the helmet versus when I'm not wearing the helmet. So that's one thing that was kind of what was it, difficult. I don't think there was the most difficult thing, but one of the difficult things. Another thing, and it's still related to the helmet, so actually let me keep holding this. Right now, so if you look closely, um, there's only so many like air holes here, right? And so what happens is you feel closed in, and it feels like it's very difficult to breathe. One of the reasons why, because you don't have um you don't have direct access to the atmosphere or to the air around you, right? It has to has to pass through these small holes. And then there's also a little bit of carbon dioxide buildup in there because as you're sparring, as you're fighting, you're expiring a lot of carbon dioxide, and it collects a little bit in the mass. So it does feel a little suffocating at times until you get used to it. Um, Another thing is like that thing fogs up, right? So it starts to get hot. You're breathing all the time. It fogs up, and so condensation builds up along the inside. So you can't wipe it off from the outside, and so it gets really foggy, and it makes it very difficult for you to see your opponent when you're sparring. So you have to really rely on seeing their body movement because you can't see those fine movements that you would be looking for, like movement of the shoulders or looking at the shoulder blade to see if they're twitching. You can't see that when it fogs up. So you have to really train to be able to pick up those more larger movements fast enough so that you're able to defend. So though that's kind of one of the most difficult, like not even most difficult, but one of the difficult things that I've had to deal with the transition to Kudo, just through the mask. Now, because I did start with traditional martial arts and I had always trained my karate, I was always training bare knuckle anyway. So I was always like hitting the bag bare knuckle, or I was always like conditioning with makiwara, or lightly lightly hitting like anything that's hard, just to get used to that kind of impact. So transitioning from boxing gloves over to these gloves, which if you look at them, they're really thin. This is what we spar in. This sparring and fighting happens in these things, right? So it's not it's thin, right? So they look a little flimsy, right? Yeah. So it's a little bit of like felt to keep from your knuckles getting scratched up on the air holes, right? And that wasn't a difficult thing for me, but after getting used to sparring and doing that, transitioning back to gloves, it gets a little weird. So I don't want to say that that's difficult, but I think it is a little inconvenient. But I do prefer this more than I do like boxing gloves now. I can say though that maybe one of the tougher things for me was a lot of the skills and the habits, striking habits that and also grappling habits that I developed over the years, before I even started doing Kudo. Um, I ended up, they ended up getting trained out of me. Not necessarily the fault of the dojo, but I do a lot of, there were a lot of like, I don't want to say dirty tactics that I would use, but there were a lot of like little tricky things that I would do. Um, just from like things that I picked up over the years. And because there was a lot of younger individuals, like junior high school kids that would train at the dojo alongside the adults in the adult class, there were some things that I wasn't able to do, and I wasn't able to train as frequently as I did before. And so a lot of those tricks that I built up, I lost just because use it or lose it, right? So that, yeah, so I think for me that those were the most difficult things, and they're not even that difficult, just different way of training. The transition itself, it wasn't very tough, and the reason why is because I had already been developing most of the skills that I would use in Kudo: the striking, the clinch, the leg catches and stuff that I learned when I was doing Standa and Sancho in university came in handy. Um, because those kind of things weren't being practiced at the dojo that I was at, or probably in most of the other dojos. So I think that was a benefit for me, but it wasn't a tough transition at all. Definitely a fun one. Having to worry about headbutts, kicks to the groin, mostly the headbutts. If Because if you don't know how to use headbutts and you headbutt wrong, you will rock your shit. And I've dazed myself headbutting wrong in the beginning, or colliding forehead to forehead, which really sucks. Yeah, it sucks. I had a knot like on my forehead for like a good like week. Like I don't know. I might have. So I when I originally came to Japan, I came to Japan in 2015. I joined the dojo maybe a month or two after I came, right? And so I started training then. I jumped past purple because I think purple belt is one of the belts that you would find within Kudo, but it's like before blue. But within the adult rankings is not really present. But in some places you will find some adults wearing purple. I don't know. But because I had already had a striking background to begin with, I think I got my blue belt 3 stripes like after white, which I should have actually had gone through white and then the blue belt with 1 stripe, 2 stripe, then the 3 stripes. So I did progress a little bit faster, and there are some stripes that I just downright skipped. Um, but there was in 2018 there was a time I did take a break. It was the 17. I took a break from Kudo for about 6 to 8 months, and I was training with my combat wrestling sambo jiu-jitsu coach at the time, Ivailo Ivanov. He's a Bulgarian who was living in Japan for at the time. And so I was working my grappling with him, and so that for that entire like 6 8 month period, I didn't do Kudo. I only did my grappling, and I did a lot of weight training, strength and conditioning at that point. And so that might have slowed down my progression down a little bit, but there was some useful skills that I learned and I gained during that time, that really helped me after I went back into Kudo. So, yeah. So that's that, right? So yeah, like all in all, it wasn't difficult. It wasn't a tough transition. If you don't have that like a if you don't have the experience in working without gloves or hitting things barehanded, then you're gonna have to relearn some of those mechanics. Um, but if you have a martial arts background, it's not going to interfere with your ability to pick this up and actually learn it. I'm actually working with a friend of mine who's in the States. He's a part of my online coaching program, and I'm pretty much working on his striking, because he's trying to grade for Kudo in the United States. Um, so there is that. Um, so yeah, that was a great question. Thank you, M Green 18F. And if any of you have any questions or anything you would like answered, I can make more videos like this, and it'll be fun for me just to kind of connect with you guys and my ladies. I'm not sure who who subscribed. In a little more kind of like intimate setting like this. I like this. So thank you everyone for subscribing and watching and actually enjoying the things that Dave and I were putting onto the channel. Um, please continue to ask questions, leave comments, and hopefully we can actually get some better content out there soon. We're a little busy. So I think that's it for me, and I would like to say thanks, guys and girls, and have a good one.